My husband said he was working late most nights. I believed him, until the night I didn't. I decided to surprise him at the office, but when I saw who he was with, something inside me shattered. Someone I never expected. Someone who made the betrayal cut deeper than any stranger ever could, and they called it a mistake. 3 months later, they were begging me to talk. But by then, I'd already won. If you are watching this video, don't forget to like, share, and comment where you're watching from. 7 years of marriage looked good on paper. Garrett and I had the kind of life people posted about on social media. The spacious condo with floor-to-ceiling windows, the matching careers, the Sunday morning coffee routine. We weren't the couple who finished each other's sentences, but we didn't need to be. We worked. At least, that's what I told myself every time he came home after midnight smelling like office coffee and printer ink. Finance consulting demanded long hours. I had my own deadlines in marketing, my own late nights staring at campaign metrics until my eyes burned. We understood each other's ambition. That's what I believed made us solid. My sister Sienna moved into our guest room on a Tuesday in February. Her landlord had sold the building, and she needed somewhere to stay just until I find a place. She stood in our doorway with 2 suitcases and that apologetic smile she'd been giving me since we were kids. I didn't hesitate. She was my sister. The first month felt normal. She'd be editing photos on the couch when I got home, her laptop screen glowing with images of strangers' weddings and corporate headshots. We'd cook together, wait for Garrett, eat dinner like a family. I liked having her around. It felt like I was finally doing something right for her. Then I started noticing. It was a Thursday when Garrett texted, working late. Client presentation ran over. I ordered takeout, figured I'd eat with Sienna, maybe watch something mindless on Netflix. But 20 minutes later, she came out of her room with her camera bag, keys in hand. Got a last-minute gig, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. Gallery opening downtown. I ate alone that night. Both of them came home after 11. The following week, Garrett had an emergency meeting with Preston on Saturday afternoon. I was planning to suggest we all grab brunch, but Sienna was already dressed and heading out the door. Wedding venue shoot, she explained, adjusting her camera strap. Potential client wants to see my work in natural light. On a Saturday, at 3 p.m, when most wedding venues were hosting actual weddings, I sat in the empty condo and listened to the silence press against my eardrums. The kind of quiet that makes you aware of your own breathing. I opened my laptop to work on a campaign pitch, but the words on the screen blurred. I closed it, poured a glass of wine, told myself I was being paranoid. Tuesday evening, Garrett got stuck on a conference call with Tokyo time zones, he said, kissing my forehead, before disappearing into his home office. An hour later, Sienna emerged from the guest room in jeans and a leather jacket. Meeting a potential client for coffee, she said. New photographer collective looking for members. I watched her leave. I counted to 60. Then I walked to the guest room door and stared at it. It was closed, like always. She'd been living with us for 3 months, and I'd never once seen inside that room with her in it. That night at dinner, the rare evening when all 3 of us were actually home, I watched them. Garrett passed the salt before Sienna asked for it. She refilled his water glass without looking. They didn't talk to each other directly, just directed all conversation through me. Tell Garrett about that campaign you landed, Sienna would say. Ask Sienna how her shoot went, Garrett would add. They were performing, both of them. And I was the audience. I thought about when we were kids. How I'd take the blame when Sienna broke Mom's vase. How I'd loan her my birthday money when she spent hers on concert tickets. How I'd driven across town at 2 a.m. when her ex-boyfriend left her stranded. Protection was what I did. It was my role, the responsible one, the sister who fixed things. But now, sitting at my own dinner table, watching my husband and sister navigate conversation like they were walking through a minefield, I felt something shift. The protectiveness I'd carried my whole life started to curdle into something else, something that tasted like metal on my tongue. After dinner, Garrett went to bed early. Work stress, he said. Sienna retreated to the guest room. I stood in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher, and realized I could hear both their bedroom doors click shut, like bookends, and me in the middle. I wiped down the counters, I turned off the lights. I walked through our home, the one Garrett and I had chosen together, the one we'd painted and furnished and filled with 5 years of memories, and it felt hollow. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was waiting. I sat on the couch in the dark and pulled out my phone, opened my calendar, started scrolling back through the past month, matching Garrett's late nights with Sienna's convenient absences. Thursday, March 14th. Saturday, March 23rd. Tuesday, March 28th. Thursday, April 4th. Every single time, my hands weren't shaking. That's what surprised me most. They were steady as I opened a new note in my phone and titled it Timeline. I wasn't ready to name what I was tracking. I wasn't ready to let the words form in my mind. But I was done pretending I didn't see the pattern. I was done being the woman who ignored her instincts because successful, logical people didn't obsess over coincidences. Tomorrow, when Garrett texted about working late, I'd be watching. And when Sienna grabbed her camera bag with another convenient excuse, I'd be ready. Because patterns don't lie, and neither does the feeling in your gut when something you love is rotting from the inside. I just needed proof. His text came at 6:14. Quarterly report needs to be done tonight. Preston's breathing down my neck. Don't wait up. I stared at the message on my phone. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, love you. I typed back, no problem. Good luck. I didn't add the heart emoji I usually sent. My thumb hovered over it, then moved away. I set the phone face down on the counter and waited. 23 minutes. That's how long it took. Sienna's door opened. She came down the hallway with her camera bag slung over her shoulder, hair freshly curled, wearing the black jeans that made her legs look longer. She'd put on lipstick for a networking event at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday. Hey, Viv. She grabbed her keys from the hook by the door. Heading out, networking thing with some other photographers. I looked up from my laptop, kept my face neutral. Oh, which photographers? The pause was microscopic. Most people wouldn't have caught it, but I'd been watching for it. Just some people from the collective I told you about, she said. You wouldn't know them. Sounds interesting. Where's it at? Another pause. Longer this time. Downtown. That new wine bar, the one on 5th. I took a sip of water, swallowed. The one that closed last month? Her face went pale. Actually pale. I watched the color drain from her cheeks like someone had pulled a plug. Oh, she said. Right, I meant the other one. On 7th. There's a wine bar on 7th? Yeah. She shifted the camera bag higher on her shoulder. It's new. Really new. Just opened. I should go. Don't want to be late. She was out the door before I could form another question. I heard her footsteps in the hallway, rapid and uneven. The elevator dinged. Then silence. I sat at the kitchen counter for 5 full minutes. My laptop screen had gone dark. I could see my reflection in it. Distorted, ghost-like. I looked like someone I didn't recognize. The lies were real. She just lied to my face. Badly. Desperately. And somewhere across town, Garrett was texting Preston about quarterly reports that didn't exist. Or maybe Preston knew. Maybe everyone knew except the wife who paid half the mortgage and bought groceries for her sister every week. I stood up. Grabbed my keys. Didn't think about what I was doing until I was already in the elevator. Already in the parking garage. Already pulling out onto the street. The drive to Garrett's office took 18 minutes. I counted everyone. Watched the clock on the dashboard tick forward while my heart hammered against my ribs. His building was downtown, all glass and steel and carefully designed to look impressive. I'd been there a dozen times. Holiday parties, the occasional lunch meeting. That time I brought him his forgotten presentation notes. I knew which floor. I knew which conference room had the best view. I parked across the street under a broken streetlight. The building was mostly dark except for scattered windows glowing yellow. 3rd floor, northeast corner. That's where his firm leased space. I could see light bleeding through the floor-to-ceiling windows. My legs felt disconnected from my body as I crossed the street. My heels clicked on the pavement too loud, like gunshots. I told myself I was wrong, that I'd get there and his office would be empty, or he'd be alone at his desk, or this was all some terrible misunderstanding that I'd laugh about someday. I reached the glass entrance, Security was minimal after hours, just a desk guard who barely looked up from his phone. The lobby was marble and cold. I walked to the windows that faced the third floor. From here, if you stood at the right angle, you could see into the conference room. The one with the long table. The one where they'd hosted the Christmas party last year. The lights were on. And there they were. Garrett had Sienna pressed against the conference table. Her hands were in his hair. His hands were on her waist, sliding under her shirt. They were kissing like they'd done it 1,000 times before. Like they knew each other's rhythm. Like this was normal, natural, easy. I couldn't breathe, literally couldn't pull air into my lungs. The world tilted sideways and I had to grip the doorframe to stay upright. My vision tunneled. All I could see was them, my husband, my sister, in a room where I'd eaten catered shrimp and made small talk with Preston's wife. They pulled apart. Garrett said something. Sienna laughed. He tucked her hair behind her ear with a tenderness I recognized because he used to do that to me. Used to. Past tense. When did it become past tense? She kissed him again, quick and familiar, then grabbed her camera bag from the chair. He checked his watch. They were coordinating, planning. They'd done this before, many times before. I turned away, put one foot in front of the other, walked back across the lobby, through the glass doors, onto the sidewalk. The security guard still hadn't looked up. The street was empty. No one had witnessed what I'd just seen. No one except me. My car was across the street. I made it there somehow. Sat in the driver's seat, stared at the steering wheel. My hands were shaking now. Finally, the trembling I'd been holding back for weeks. 20 minutes. I sat there for 20 minutes, watching the building, waiting to see if they'd come out together. They didn't. Smart. They'd leave separately. Different exits, different times. They'd go home to their separate spaces and text goodnight to each other and sleep peacefully while I sat in my car under a broken streetlight trying to remember how to breathe. When I finally drove home, I didn't cry. I thought I would. I'd imagined this moment, the discovery, the devastation, and I'd always pictured myself falling apart, screaming, breaking things, demanding answers. But I didn't do any of that. I drove home in complete silence. No radio, no phone calls, just the sound of my tires on asphalt and my heartbeat in my ears. Something inside me had cracked open, but nothing was spilling out. It was like the brake had created a vacuum. An emptiness. I pulled into our parking garage, took the elevator to our floor, unlocked the door to our home. The lights were still on in the kitchen where I'd left them. My laptop was still on the counter, my water glass half empty, like I'd never left. Like the last hour hadn't happened. Like I hadn't just watched my entire life reveal itself as a lie. I closed the door behind me, locked it, set my keys on the hook next to where Sienna's keys had been hanging before she left to meet my husband. I walked through her living room, past the photos of our wedding, past the couch where Sienna edited her photos, past the guest room door that was always closed. I sat on our bed, where Garrett would come home and slip under the covers and kiss my shoulder and whisper that he loved me. The same mouth that had been on my sister an hour ago. And that's when it happened. Not tears, not rage, something colder, something that felt like steel forming in my chest. A clarity I'd never experienced before. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of watching me break. I was going to plan. Garrett came home at 11:47. I heard his key in the lock, heard him walk through the living room toward our bedroom. I was already in bed, eyes closed, breathing steady, playing the role. He kissed my forehead, whispered, "Sorry, babe, Preston's a nightmare." His breath smelled like mint, like he'd stopped somewhere to prepare. I didn't move. Let him think I was asleep. He slipped into bed beside me, and within minutes his breathing deepened. He fell asleep instantly, peacefully, while I lay there in the dark counting the minutes until morning. Sienna came home 20 minutes later. I heard her pause in the hallway outside our bedroom door, heard her continue to the guest room. The door clicked shut. The lock turned. I'd never noticed before that she locked it every night. I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and listened to Garrett breathe and planned. At 6:30, Garrett's alarm went off. He stretched, kissed my shoulder, got up. "Early meeting," he said. He disappeared into the bathroom. The shower started. I was out of bed before the water hit his skin. His laptop sat on the dresser, password protected, but I knew it. Our anniversary. I opened it and navigated straight to his messages. The affair started 18 months ago, March 23rd, my birthday party, the one I'd thrown at our place with catered food and 40 of our closest friends. I remembered Sienna getting drunk on champagne, remembered Garrett helping her to the guest room. I remembered thinking how sweet he was, how lucky I was. The first message was from her at 2 a.m. I can't stop thinking about tonight. His response, me neither, but we can't. You know we can't. Her reply, I know, but I want to. 3 weeks later, just once, to get it out of our systems, but it wasn't just once. I scrolled through hundreds of messages, timestamps matching every late night, every business trip, every weekend Sienna claimed to have photography gigs, hotels in the city, hotels outside the city, an entire weekend in Portland while I visited Mom. Your sister almost walked in on us. Garrett, 6 months ago. We're getting sloppy. Sienna, 4 months ago. I hate lying to her. Garrett, 2 months ago. Then stop. Sienna. You know I can't. Him. They'd used the guest room. While I was at work, while I was in the next room, there were jokes about it, about the thrill, about almost getting caught. The shower turned off. I closed the laptop, set it exactly where it had been, climbed back into bed. Garrett came out, got dressed, kissed me goodbye. Love you, he said. I waited until the front door closed. Then I got up. The credit card statements were in our shared drive. I'd always handled our finances. Garrett trusted me with access to everything. I pulled up the last 2 years and started scrolling. The Grandview Hotel, $800. 3 months ago. Garrett's overnight strategy session. I'd sent him off with a good luck kiss. Meridian Restaurant, $350. His business dinner. I'd eaten leftover pasta alone. Cascade Spa and Resort, $600. I remembered that day. I'd been pitching a major client. Garrett said he had meetings all day. Sienna had a corporate shoot. I clicked the charge. The invoice loaded. Services, couples relaxation package, 2 massages, 2 facials, champagne, rose petals. My hand pressed hard against my mouth. I opened our Venmo history, searched Garrett's transfers to Sienna. The first was from a year ago, $800. Note, for the new camera lens, I remembered. She'd come to me crying about needing equipment. I'd offered to pay. She'd said no, that Garrett already offered, $700, $500, $950, $1,200. The transfers went on, every few weeks, sometimes twice a month, always with innocent notes. Good luck with your shoot. Hope this helps. I cross-referenced the dates with the credit card charges. Every hotel room, every fancy dinner, every spa package. They matched his transfers to her. He was paying her back, for her half. They were splitting the cost of their affair. And the money came from our joint account, the one I deposited my paycheck into every 2 weeks, the one we used for household expenses and savings and our future. I thought about every time Sienna had asked for help. Every $200 for groceries, $500 for rent, $1,000 for her car. She'd cried, hugged me, called me the best sister in the world. She'd been taking my money and using it to sleep with my husband. I pulled up our savings account, the one for a house someday, for kids, for the future we were supposed to have. It should have had $60,000. We'd been saving for 4 years. It had $38,000. Garrett had been moving money out, $1,000 here, $2,000 there, small enough I wouldn't notice. Over 18 months, he drained $22,000 from our future to pay for hotel rooms with my sister. My phone buzzed. Sienna? Morning? Want to grab coffee later? I miss our sister time. Heart emoji. I stared at the message. At the casual way she asked to spend time with me while sleeping with my husband using my money. I didn't respond. I set the phone down, opened a new spreadsheet, started documenting everything. Every message, every charge, every transfer, every date, every lie. The shock was gone. The numbness had burned away. What was left was clean and sharp and certain. They'd made me the fool. They'd made me fund my own betrayal. They'd laughed about it in messages I was never supposed to see. But I'd seen them now. Every single piece of evidence. I took screenshots, downloaded statements, saved everything to a folder they'd never find, created backups on a drive I'd hide, built a case they couldn't deny. My coffee sat cold beside the laptop. The morning light filtered through the windows of the home we'd built together, the home he'd destroyed, the home I'd be leaving, but not yet. Not until I was ready. Not until every piece was in place. I closed the laptop, took a shower, got dressed for work, put on lipstick, tied my hair back, looked at myself in the mirror. I looked the same, but I wasn't. I'd never be that woman again. The woman who trusted, who protected, who believed in family and love and promises. That woman died last night outside an office building, watching through glass windows. This woman, she was going to win. I woke up before Garrett on Thursday morning. The alarm hadn't gone off yet. Pale light filtered through the curtains, and I lay there watching him sleep. His face was peaceful, relaxed, like a man with nothing to hide. I felt nothing. No love, no anger. Just a cold, clinical assessment of the man beside me. The one who'd kissed my sister with those lips. The one who'd whispered promises to her with that mouth. The one who came home and did the same to me. I imagined what most women would do. Scream. Throw things. Wake him up with accusations. Drag Sienna out of the guest room and force them both to face me. Make them explain. Make them beg. Make them see what they'd done. The fantasy was vivid. I could see myself standing in the living room, holding up the bank statements, the hotel receipts, the messages, watching their faces go pale, watching them scramble for excuses that didn't exist. But then what? They'd apologize. They'd cry. They'd blame each other. Blame the stress. Blame anything but themselves. Garrett would say it meant nothing. Sienna would say she was confused. They'd ask for forgiveness, for time, for another chance. And if I refused, if I told them to leave, they'd have each other. They'd comfort each other. Bond over the terrible thing they'd done to the crazy, vengeful wife. I'd be the villain in their love story. The obstacle they overcame together. No, that wasn't how this would end. I got up quietly, made coffee, sat at the kitchen counter and thought about power. Real power. The kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind that moves in silence. Confrontation was what they expected, what they'd probably planned for. Maybe they even wanted it. Wanted the guilt lifted. Wanted permission to stop hiding. Wanted me to make the decision for them. I wasn't going to give them that. That evening, I cooked dinner. Pasta with the sauce Garrett liked. Salad. Garlic bread. I set the table for 3. Opened a bottle of wine. When Garrett came home, I kissed him at the door. "How was your day?" "Long," he said, setting down his briefcase. "But good. Is that your carbonara?" "Your favorite." I smiled, handed him a glass of wine. Sienna emerged from her room as we sat down. She'd changed clothes, put on makeup, for a Thursday night dinner at home. "This smells amazing, Viv." "Thanks." I passed her the salad. "How was your day?" "Exhausting. 3 different shoots. My feet are killing me." She took a sip of wine, looked at Garrett, looked away quickly. But the clients were happy, so that's good. We ate, we talked. Garrett complained about Preston. I shared a story about a difficult client. Sienna showed us photos from her latest shoot. It was all so normal, so comfortable, so practiced. Inside my head, different words played. "You were at the Grandview Hotel on Tuesday." That's what I wanted to say when Garrett mentioned his late meeting. "You weren't at a shoot. You were with my husband." That's what I wanted to scream when Sienna talked about her exhausting day. But I didn't. I smiled. I nodded. I refilled wine glasses. Sienna sighed halfway through dinner. "I hate to ask, Viv, but I'm a little short on rent this month. The photography collective dues went up, and I had to buy new equipment." She looked down at her plate. "Could you maybe loan me $500? I'll pay you back by the end of the month. I promise." I knew the photography collective didn't exist. I knew the equipment money had come from Garrett 2 weeks ago. I knew she'd probably already spent it on lingerie or expensive dinners or whatever else they did when they weren't lying to my face. Of course, I said, reached across the table and squeezed her hand. You don't have to pay me back. Family helps family. Her eyes got glassy. You're the best sister. I don't deserve you. Don't say that. I smiled wider. I love you. Garrett watched us with this soft expression, like he was moved by the bond between sisters, like he hadn't been destroying that bond for 18 months. You too, he said. It's nice having Sienna here. Feels like family. It does, I agreed. Raised my glass. To family. We clinked glasses, drank. The wine tasted like metal on my tongue. After dinner, I cleaned the kitchen while they retreated to separate rooms. Garrett kissed me before bed, his hands on my waist, his mouth on mine. I kissed him back. Let him pull me close. Let him whisper that he loved me. Love you too, I said. The words came easily. Meant nothing. He fell asleep quickly. I waited until his breathing deepened, then slipped out of bed. Took my laptop to the living room. Sat in the dark with just the screen glow illuminating my face. I searched divorce attorneys in the city, read reviews, made notes, looked up bank account separation, how to protect assets, how to document infidelity, how to leave without warning. The information was clinical, step by step, reassuring in its clarity. There were rules for this. Procedures, laws that protected betrayed spouses. I just had to follow them. I opened a new document, typed at the top, things they don't know I know. 1. The affair started at my birthday party 18 months ago. 2. They've used our guest room multiple times. 3. Garrett has drained $22,000 from our savings. 4. They split the cost of hotels and dates using our joint account. 5. Every time Sienna asks me for money, she's already gotten money from Garrett. 6. They joke about almost getting caught. 7. They've been to Portland together, the Grandview Hotel, Cascade Spa, Meridian Restaurant. 8. They think I don't suspect anything. The list went on. 14 items total. 14 pieces of evidence they'd handed me without knowing. 14 ways they'd underestimated the woman they'd betrayed. I saved the document, closed the laptop, sat in the silence of our living room and felt something close to peace. Not happiness, not satisfaction, just clarity. They wanted a reaction, tears, rage, a scene they could point to later and say, she lost it. She couldn't handle it. We didn't have a choice. I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. I was going to give them something worse, something they wouldn't see coming until it was too late. I was going to give them each other, because the secret was the only thing holding them together. The forbidden nature, the stolen moments, the thrill of getting away with it. Once that was gone, once they had to face each other in the cold light of day with no one to hide from, they'd realize what they'd actually chosen. Nothing. They'd chosen nothing. And I'd be gone by then, with the money, with the evidence, with my dignity intact. They'd be left with each other and the ruins of what they'd destroyed, and that, I was starting to realize, was the best revenge I could imagine. I texted Natalie at 7 a.m. Need to talk. Can you meet today? Her response came 30 seconds later, of course. Coffee at 10. I sent back a thumbs up and sat staring at my phone. 3 more hours of pretending. 3 more hours of smiling at Garrett over breakfast and waving goodbye like everything was fine. I could do that. I'd been doing it for days now. The coffee shop was downtown, far enough from our neighborhood that I wouldn't run into anyone we knew. Natalie was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups in front of her. She stood when she saw me. One look at my face and her expression changed. Viv, she said. Just my name, nothing else. And something inside me cracked open. I sat down and the words came pouring out. Garrett, Sienna, the office building, the messages, the money. I told her everything while my hands shook around the coffee cup I couldn't drink. Natalie didn't interrupt. She just listened, her jaw getting tighter with every sentence. When I finally stopped talking, she was gripping her cup so hard I thought it might shatter. That fucking bastard, she said. Her voice was low and cold. And your sister. Jesus Christ, Vivian. She reached across the table and took my hand. I'm going to help you destroy them. Legally. Completely. They won't know what hit them. The certainty in her voice was the first solid thing I'd felt in days. She sat back and ran her hands through her hair. I knew something was off, she said. The way he'd changed the subject when I asked about you two. How he never wanted to do couple things anymore. I thought maybe he was stressed or going through something. She looked at me with so much pain in her eyes. I should have said something. I should have pushed harder. I shook my head, told her there was nothing she could have done. But part of me felt validated. I wasn't crazy. Other people had noticed too. We spent the next hour talking through options. Natalie pulled out a notepad and started making lists like she was preparing for trial. First, we document everything. Every message, every transaction, every piece of evidence. Second, we protect your assets. Open a separate account, start moving money quietly. Third, we get ahead of this legally. She tapped her pen against the table. You need representation. Someone who won't let them spin this into something it's not. Someone who'll make sure you get everything you deserve. I have someone in mind, she said. Felix Cartwright. He's a colleague of mine. Does mostly high-stakes divorces. He's ruthless, strategic, and he doesn't lose. She pulled out her phone and started typing. He's expensive, but he's worth it. I'll set up a meeting for this week. I watched her work, this woman who'd been my best friend since college, and felt something like hope. Or maybe it was just relief that I wasn't doing this alone. Here's the thing, I said, interrupting her planning. I don't want a big dramatic divorce. I don't want to fight with them or negotiate or sit in rooms hashing out who gets what. Natalie looked up, confused. I want to disappear. I want to leave before they even know what's happening. And then I want to let them have each other. I took a sip of coffee. It was cold now. I want them to realize what they actually chose once the secret is gone. Natalie was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. I get it. The best revenge is letting them destroy themselves. She leaned forward. But you still need to protect yourself first. You disappear without securing your assets. Without filing papers, without documentation. They'll come after you. They'll make you the villain. They'll drain accounts and sell property and leave you with nothing. Her voice was firm. We do this smart. We do this right. Then you can walk away and watch them burn. We spent the next 2 hours building a plan. Natalie wrote everything down in her precise attorney handwriting. Document phase. 2 weeks. Asset protection. 1 week concurrent. Legal filing. Coordinated with departure date. I'd open a new bank account on Monday. Start transferring money from my personal accounts. Collect physical evidence. Receipts, statements, anything they'd left lying around. Take photos, make copies. Build an airtight case they couldn't argue with. Then, when everything was in place, I'd file papers and disappear simultaneously. What about living arrangements? Natalie asked. You can't stay there once you file. I hadn't thought that far ahead. She pulled up apartment listings on her phone. Sublets are perfect. Temporary, flexible, no long-term commitment. You could be out in 2 weeks if we move fast. We looked through options. Small studios, furnished one-bedrooms, places that would be mine alone. Places Garrett had never been. Places Sienna would never visit. The idea of having space that was completely separate from them felt like oxygen. Natalie closed her laptop and reached across the table again. Held both my hands this time. You're not alone in this, she said. I know it feels like your whole world just imploded. But you have me. You'll have Felix. And we're going to make sure you come out of this hole. Her grip was strong, steady. They think they got away with it. They think you're oblivious. That's their biggest mistake. She smiled, and it wasn't warm. It was sharp. We're going to use that against them. And by the time they realize what's happening, you'll already be gone. Felix Cartwright's office was on the 42nd floor of a glass tower downtown. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 40s, with silver at his temples and eyes that assessed me the moment I walked in. Natalie had briefed him already. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. Your husband and sister have been having an affair for 18 months, using marital assets to fund it, he said, pulling out a legal pad, and you want to disappear before they know you know. He smiled. It wasn't kind. It was calculating. I can work with that. Felix laid out the strategy like he was planning a military operation. First, we protect your assets. Move money from joint accounts into a personal account they can't access. Not all of it. That looks suspicious, but enough to survive independently, he wrote as he talked, his handwriting sharp and precise. Second, we gather ironclad evidence. Screenshots aren't enough. We need originals, timestamps, metadata, bank statements going back 2 years, hotel receipts, everything. He looked up at me. Third, we time the filing perfectly. Papers serve the same day you leave. They won't have time to hide assets or create counter-narratives. By the time they realize what's happening, you'll be untouchable. Monday morning, I walked into a bank across town. Not our usual one. I opened an account under my maiden name, Vivian Harper, not Vivian Hollis. The banker asked if I needed checks. I said no. This account was for receiving, not spending. That afternoon, I transferred $3,000 from my personal checking account. Not from the joint account yet. That would come later, slowly, in amounts Garrett wouldn't notice. 500 here, 1,000 there. Building my escape fund transaction by transaction. Every night after Garrett fell asleep, I worked. Screenshot every message on his laptop. Download every bank statement from the past 2 years. Print physical copies of credit card charges and file them in a folder I kept in my car. I photographed hotel receipts I found crumpled in his jacket pockets. Saved Venmo transactions to a cloud drive he didn't know existed. Each piece of evidence was a brick in the wall I was building between us. And they had no idea. They came home and kissed me and asked about my day while I smiled and nodded and quietly documented their destruction. Thursday evening, I ran into Iris Sullivan in the parking garage. She lived 2 floors above us, worked from home as a graphic designer. We'd exchanged pleasantries before, but never really talked. "Vivian," she said, looking startled. "Hi. How are you?" There was something in her voice, an awkwardness I recognized now, the tone people used when they knew something you didn't, or thought you didn't. I made a split-second decision. "Can I ask you something?" I said, "about my husband." We went up to her apartment. She made tea she didn't drink and sat across from me wringing her hands. "I didn't know if I should say anything," she started. "It's not my business. And I wasn't sure if you knew or if telling you would just make things worse." She took a breath. I saw them. "Your husband and your sister." About 4 months ago. I was getting out of my car and they were in the corner by the stairwell. They were kissing, her eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry. I should have told you then. I just didn't know how. I felt nothing. No shock. No pain. Just validation." "I know about the affair," I said quietly. Iris looked up, surprised. "I've known for a while. I'm gathering evidence for divorce proceedings." I paused. "Would you be willing to write down what you saw? Date, time, location. Just a witness statement." She nodded immediately. "Yes. God, yes. I've felt sick about it ever since." She grabbed a notebook and started writing right there. 2 paragraphs, dated and signed. She handed it to me like it was something fragile. "I hope you destroy him," she said. That weekend, while Garrett and Sienna were both conveniently out, his office catch-up, her gallery event, I started packing. Not everything. Just essentials. Important documents from the filing cabinet, birth certificate, social security card, passport, tax returns. Sentimental items they wouldn't notice missing. My grandmother's necklace, photo albums from before Garrett, journals from college. Clothes I could fit in 2 suitcases. I worked quickly, methodically, hiding packed boxes in the back of my closet behind winter coats. Every item I put away was a piece of my old life I was saving. Everything I left behind could burn. Natalie helped me find an apartment. A furnished studio across town, available for immediate move-in, month-to-month lease. The landlord didn't ask questions when I paid first and last month in cash from my new account. I signed the lease as Vivian Harper. Took the keys. Stood in the empty space that would be mine alone. No shared walls with liars. No guest room hiding secrets. Just silence. Clean, empty silence. I'd move my boxes there slowly over the next week. Piece by piece. Until I was ready to walk away and never look back. Felix called Tuesday with an update. "Papers are ready to file. Just need your signature and we can serve him whenever you're ready." I told him 2 weeks. I needed 2 weeks to finish moving money, to pack everything that mattered, to make sure there were no loose ends. He agreed. 2 weeks from today, we file. I'll have a process server deliver papers to his office at 10 a.m. You should be moved out by then, completely gone. The finality of it made my hands shake. This was real. This was happening. That night, I stood in our living room after everyone had gone to bed. Looked at the couch where we used to watch movies, the dining table where we'd hosted friends, the window where we'd watched the city lights and talked about our future. This home held 7 years of my life, 7 years of believing in something that was rotting from the inside. I felt grief, sharp and unexpected. Not for Garrett, not even for Sienna. For the woman I'd been, the one who'd trusted, who'd believed, who'd thought family meant something. But that woman was gone now, and in her place was someone harder, someone who documented and planned and moved in silence, someone who knew that the best revenge wasn't screaming or breaking things. It was walking away with everything that mattered and letting them choke on what they'd chosen. I turned off the lights and went to bed. 14 days left. 14 days of smiling and lying and playing the role. Then I'd disappear. And they'd finally understand what they'd lost. The alarm didn't go off because I'd turned it off the night before. 5:15 a.m. The room was still dark, just the faintest hint of gray at the edges of the curtains. Garrett lay beside me on his back, one arm thrown over his head, breathing deep and even. Down the hall, Sienna's door was closed like always, the lock engaged. They were both asleep, both peaceful, both completely unaware that when they woke up, I'd be gone. I got out of bed slowly, carefully, the way I'd practiced all week. No sudden movements, no creaking floorboards. I'd already showered and laid out my clothes the night before. Jeans, a sweater, comfortable shoes for driving. I dressed in the bathroom with the door closed, brushed my teeth, pulled my hair into a ponytail, looked at myself in the mirror one last time. The woman staring back looked calm, determined, nothing like the woman who'd stood outside an office building 2 weeks ago and watched her world shatter. I walked back to the bedroom. Garrett hadn't moved. His phone was on the nightstand, plugged in, the screen dark. I stood there for a moment looking at him. This man I'd loved. This man I'd built a life with. This man who'd been kissing my sister in conference rooms and hotel beds while I paid the bills. I felt nothing. No love, no hate, just cold, clear resolution. I turned and walked down the hall, paused at the guest room door. Behind it, Sienna slept in the bed I'd made up for her, surrounded by belongings I'd helped her move in. I didn't open the door. Just stood there for 3 seconds. Then I walked away. My car was already packed. I'd been moving things to the new apartment all week in small loads. Boxes of clothes, important documents, items that mattered. The last 2 suitcases were by the front door, where I'd left them at midnight. I picked them up, took my keys from the hook, and opened the door. No note on the counter, no explanation on the fridge, no forwarding address. Just empty space where I used to be. I stepped into the hallway and pulled the door closed behind me. It didn't slam. It clicked shut quietly, politely, like I was just leaving for work. The drive across town took 30 minutes. The streets were empty except for early morning joggers and a few delivery trucks. I didn't turn on the radio, just drove in silence, watching the city wake up around me. My new apartment building looked different in the pre-dawn light. Smaller, less intimidating. I parked in my assigned spot, carried my suitcases up to the 3rd floor, unlocked the door to 3 degrees Celsius. The space was exactly as I'd left it yesterday. Empty, clean, mine. I set the suitcases down, closed the door, turned the deadbolt. Then I took my phone out of my pocket, powered it off completely, and set it on the counter. Garrett's alarm went off at 6:30. I wasn't there to know this, but I could imagine it. The sound pulling him from sleep. His hand reaching across the bed to hit snooze. Finding empty space where I should have been. He'd assume I'd gotten up early for work. Maybe already in the shower. He'd lie there for another 9 minutes until the alarm went off again. Then he'd get up, walk to the bathroom, find it empty, call my name, nothing. Walk through the apartment, living room empty, kitchen empty, office empty. That's when he'd notice. My shoes gone from the rack, my coat missing from the closet, my laptop absent from the desk. Sienna heard the commotion. Garrett's voice calling my name, getting louder, more frantic. She came out of the guest room in pajamas, hair messy, eyes confused. "What's wrong?" she asked. Garrett was standing in our bedroom doorway, staring at the closet. Half of it empty, hangers bare, drawers pulled open and cleaned out. "She's gone," he said. His voice sounded hollow. Sienna pushed past him into the bedroom, opened my nightstand, Empty. Checked the bathroom, my toothbrush gone, my makeup gone, everything gone. She turned to Garrett, face pale. Where did she go? They stood in the living room, avoiding each other's eyes. This was the first time they'd been alone together without me as a buffer. Without someone to perform for. The air between them felt wrong. Charged. Guilty. Garrett pulled out his phone and called me. It went straight to voicemail. He called again. 5 times. 10 times. All voicemail. He tried texting. Where are you? Are you okay? Please call me. The messages showed delivered but not read. Sienna tried calling too. Same result. They stood there with their phones in their hands like strangers. Do you think she knows? Sienna's voice was barely a whisper. Garrett ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized as panic. I don't know. Maybe. Jesus, I don't know. He walked to the window, looked out at the parking lot. My car was gone. Maybe she just needed space. Maybe it's work stress. Maybe? He trailed off. Neither of them believed it. Sienna sat on the couch, the same couch where they'd probably kissed when I was at the office. She took everything, Sienna said. Her documents, her photos, her grandmother's necklace. People don't take that stuff when they're just clearing their head. The silence that followed was thick with realization. I sat on the floor of my new apartment, with my back against the wall. The morning sun was coming through the window now, warm on my face. I'd been holding everything in for 2 weeks, smiling, planning, moving through the motions like an actress in a play I was directing. But now, alone in this empty space with no one to perform for, something broke open. I started crying. Not loud, dramatic sobs. Just tears streaming down my face while my shoulders shook. Grief for the life I'd believed in. Relief that I'd finally escaped. Fear about what came next. All of it pouring out in the quiet morning light. At 10 a.m., a process server walked into Garrett's office building. He took the elevator to the 3rd floor, walked past the receptionist who tried to stop him, and knocked on the conference room door. Garrett was in a meeting with Preston and 2 clients. The door opened. Garrett Hollis? The server asked. Garrett stood confused. Yes? The server handed him a manila envelope. You've been served. Then he walked out. Garrett stood there holding the envelope while everyone in the room stared. His hands were shaking as he opened it. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Evidence of adultery attached. Asset distribution demands. He looked up at Preston. I have to go, he said, and for the first time in 18 months, Garrett Hollis understood exactly what he'd lost. 3 weeks after I left, Natalie called with an update. Preston kicked Garrett out, she said. I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. Apparently having your business partner's messy affair drama become public knowledge isn't great for client relations. Garrett staying at some extended stay hotel near the office. She paused. And get this, Sienna moved in with him. They're playing house now. I sat on my couch with my coffee and felt nothing. No jealousy, no anger, just clinical interest in watching the experiment unfold. Our mutual friend Claire texted me a few days later. She didn't know I knew about the affair, thought she was breaking news. I heard Garrett and your sister are together now. I'm so sorry. I typed back, I know. We're divorcing. 3 dots appeared and disappeared for a full minute before she responded. Good. He doesn't deserve you. The word was spreading. People were choosing sides. And from what Natalie told me, most people were choosing mine. Garrett's reputation was crumbling. The successful finance guy was now the man who'd cheated with his wife's sister. Natalie had coffee with Troy last week. Troy was Garrett's best friend since college, had been the best man at our wedding. He says they're fighting constantly, Natalie reported. Garrett's drinking too much. Sienna's crying all the time. The hotel walls are thin, and apparently the neighbors complain about the screaming matches. She took a sip of her latte. Troy asked if you'd consider talking to Garrett. I told him to go to hell, I smiled. Not a happy smile. A satisfied one. What did he say? Natalie shrugged. That he understood. The affair had lost its shine the moment it stopped being secret. When they were sneaking around, lying to me, stealing moments in hotel rooms and our guest room, it had felt exciting, dangerous, worth the risk. But now they had each other completely. No hiding, no thrill. Just 2 people who'd destroyed everything for what turned out to be nothing special. They'd discovered what I already knew. Chemistry built on betrayal doesn't survive in daylight. It rots. My mother called on a Thursday evening. I saw her name on the screen and almost didn't answer, but I did. Vivian, she said, her voice tight. We need to talk about the situation. I stayed silent. Your sister is devastated. She made a mistake. You're being cruel by cutting her off like this. I could hear judgment in every word. The implication that I was the one being unreasonable, that I should be the bigger person. That family forgives. I felt rage simmer but kept my voice level. She didn't make a mistake, Mom. She had an affair with my husband for 18 months. People make choices they regret, Mom continued, like she hadn't heard me. You're throwing away your family over this. Sienna needs you. She's your sister. The audacity of it. That I should comfort the woman who'd been sleeping with my husband. That I should put family first when family had put me last. I'm throwing away my family, I repeated. My voice was cold now. Mom, she was using the money I gave her to pay for hotel rooms, where she slept with Garrett. She looked me in the eye every single day and lied. That's not family. I could hear my mother breathing on the other end of the line. You're being dramatic, she said finally. This is what happens when you let your pride get in the way of forgiveness. That was it. The moment I realized my mother would never understand, would never choose my side, would never acknowledge what had been done to me. I'm not being dramatic, I said quietly. I'm being done. I will never speak to Sienna again, and if you keep pushing this, you'll lose me too. The silence stretched between us. Then I hung up, turned off my phone, sat in my apartment, and felt lighter than I had in months. Troy called Natalie again 2 days later, asked if he could pass along a message to me. Natalie called me. Do you want to hear it? She asked. I said yes. Garrett says he made a mistake. That he's sorry. That he never meant to hurt you. That if you just talked to him, he could explain. The words were so predictable, I almost laughed. Troy had apparently added his own commentary. I told him he's pathetic. That he destroyed the best thing he ever had for someone he doesn't even like now. I closed my eyes. Tell Troy thank you, and tell him I have nothing to say to Garrett. Felix sent an email with the subject line, Progress Update. I opened it at my desk during lunch. Garrett's lawyer is trying to negotiate, it read. Wants to split assets 50-50. Claims the affair is irrelevant to financial settlement. I laughed in his face. We have documentation of financial infidelity, using marital assets to fund an extramarital affair. Judge will side with us. He'd attached a summary of what I'd likely receive. The condo, 60% of savings, my car, and half of Garrett's retirement accounts. I read it twice. This was real. I was winning. That evening, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine and watched the sun set over the city. Somewhere across town, Garrett and Sienna were probably fighting in that hotel room. Probably blaming each other for how everything had fallen apart. Probably realizing they'd given up everything. Me, family, friends, respect, stability, for something that only existed because it was forbidden. I took a sip of wine. Turns out betrayal only feels good when it's forbidden. Once they had each other, they realized they traded everything for nothing, and I'd walked away with my dignity intact. 6 months after I left, I walked into the courthouse wearing a gray suit and heels that made me 3 inches taller. My hair was pulled back. My makeup was minimal. I looked professional, composed, powerful. Felix met me at the entrance. Ready? He asked. I nodded. I'd been ready since the morning I drove away from that condo and never looked back. This was just the formality. The legal stamp on a decision I'd already made. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Fluorescent lights and wooden benches and the smell of old paper. Garrett was already there with his lawyer, sitting at the defendant's table. I barely recognized him. He'd lost weight. His suit hung loose on his frame. Dark circles under his eyes. Hair that needed cutting. He looked up when I walked in, and something in his face cracked. Desperation, regret, panic. I looked away, sat down next to Felix. Kept my spine straight and my expression neutral. Sienna wasn't there. I'd wondered if she would be, if she'd show up to support the man she'd destroyed my life for. But the gallery was empty except for Natalie in the back row and a handful of other people I didn't recognize. Felix leaned over. They broke up, he whispered. 2 months ago. Apparently it got ugly. I nodded like this was news to me, like Natalie hadn't already told me. Like I hadn't known from the moment they were forced to face each other without me as their cover that this was inevitable. The judge called the case. Felix stood and presented our evidence. Bank statements showing Garrett had drained $22,000 from our savings to fund the affair, hotel receipts, credit card charges, Venmo transfers, messages between Garrett and Sienna discussing dates and locations, Iris Sullivan's witness statement about seeing them in the parking garage. The timeline proving the affair lasted 18 months. Felix laid it all out methodically, clinically, like he was presenting a murder case. In a way, he was. The murder of a marriage? Garrett's lawyer tried to argue, said the affair was regrettable but shouldn't impact asset division, that Garrett had contributed equally to the marriage and deserved equal assets. Felix cut him off. Your client used marital funds to conduct an extramarital affair with the plaintiff's sister, he said. His voice was sharp, precise. He committed financial infidelity. The evidence is overwhelming. There is no defense here. The judge looked at Garrett's lawyer, waited. The lawyer had nothing. He sat down. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of the clock on the wall. The judge reviewed the documents for what felt like an hour but was probably 10 minutes. Then she looked up. Divorce granted, she said. Assets to be divided as proposed by the plaintiff's counsel. Mrs. Hollis, she paused. Miss Harper receives the marital condo, 60% of joint savings accounts, her vehicle, and 50% of the defendant's retirement funds. Mr. Hollis is responsible for his own legal fees and any debts incurred during the affair. She banged the gavel. Just like that, it was over. 7 years of marriage dissolved in 45 minutes. We filed out of the courtroom. I was walking toward the exit when I heard footsteps behind me. Vivian, wait! Garrett's voice. I stopped, turned around slowly. He looked worse up close. Broken. He took a step toward me and Felix moved between us. It's fine, I told Felix. He stepped aside but stayed close. Garrett opened his mouth. Closed it. Tried again. I'm sorry, he said. His voice cracked. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I need you to know. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. I looked at him. Really looked at him. This man I'd loved. This man I'd built a life with. This man who'd thrown it all away for the thrill of sneaking around with my sister. I felt nothing. No anger. No pain. No lingering affection. Just emptiness where he used to be. You're right, I said quietly. It doesn't mean anything. His face fell. He'd expected more. Expected me to yell or cry or engage, to give him the fight that would let him feel like this mattered. I spent weeks wondering what I'd say to you if I ever got the chance, I continued. But standing here now, I realize you were never worth my tears. He flinched like I'd hit him. Opened his mouth to say something else. I didn't wait to hear it. I turned and walked out of the courthouse. Felix followed. Natalie was waiting on the steps. She pulled me into a hug. You did it, she said. It's over. I hugged her back and felt something release in my chest. Relief. Pure. Clean relief. The kind that comes when something painful is finally finished. When you can stop bracing for impact and just breathe. We went to lunch at a restaurant downtown. Natalie ordered champagne. To freedom, she said, raising her glass. I clinked mine against hers. To freedom. Felix smiled. And to winning. We drank. Talked about next steps. I'd move back into the condo next week. It was mine now. Legally, completely mine. I'd repaint, replace the furniture, make it a space that held no memories of Garrett. Or maybe I'd sell it and start completely fresh, somewhere new. The options stretched out in front of me like roads I could choose. Later, after Felix left and Natalie and I were finishing our second bottle of wine, she told me the rest. Sienna's living with your mom now, she said. Lost her apartment, can't afford rent without your money, and Garrett's. She's broke. Alone. Your mom's apparently not happy about it either. I processed this information, tried to find satisfaction in it, but I didn't. I just felt tired. I don't care, I realized. I don't care what happens to either of them anymore. They're not my problem. Natalie squeezed my hand. Good, she said. They never should have been. 1 year after I walked out of that courthouse, I stood in my new apartment watching the city wake up. Not the studio I'd fled to. Not the condo I'd sold 6 months ago for more than it was worth. A real place. 2 bedrooms on the 8th floor with windows that caught the morning light. I'd furnished it myself, chosen every piece. Nothing from my old life made it through the door. This space was mine in a way nothing had been mine in years. Clean, quiet, free of ghosts. I wasn't the same woman who'd stood outside that office building watching her life shatter through glass windows. That woman had been softer, more willing to ignore the voice in her gut that said something was wrong, more concerned with keeping peace than demanding truth. I looked at myself in the mirror some mornings and barely recognized her. My eyes were harder now, my jaw set differently. I'd learned what I was capable of when pushed, the steel that had always been there, hidden under layers of niceness and accommodation, and the desire to be loved. I didn't regret finding it. Therapy helped. Claudia's office became a place where I could say things I couldn't say anywhere else. That I was angry. That some days I fantasized about worse revenge than I'd taken. That I mourned, not just the marriage, but the version of my sister I thought existed. Claudia didn't tell me to forgive. Didn't push me toward closure I wasn't ready for. She just helped me process without letting the bitterness take root. "You survive something that breaks people," she said once. "Don't let survival turn into a life sentence of anger." I carried those words with me. I'd learned to trust myself again. That was the hardest part. Learning that my instincts weren't paranoia. That the voice saying something's wrong wasn't insecurity or jealousy or being controlling. It was truth trying to surface. I listen to that voice now. When dates didn't feel right, I walked away. When job offers seemed too good, I asked harder questions. When people's words didn't match their actions, I noticed. I'd been taught the most valuable lesson anyone can learn. Believe what people show you, not what they tell you. I heard about Garrett through mutual acquaintances I ran into occasionally. He'd left Preston's firm, or been pushed out, depending on who told the story. Started his own consulting business that struggled to get clients. Lived in a one-bedroom apartment in a part of town he used to call transitional. He'd tried dating, apparently. It hadn't gone well. Turns out women weren't impressed by men who'd cheated with their wife's sister. His reputation followed him. I felt nothing hearing these updates. No satisfaction, no sympathy, just distance. He was a person I used to know who'd made choices that destroyed his own life. That wasn't my concern anymore. Sienna never reached out, not once in a year. No apology, no explanation, no attempt at reconciliation. She'd moved back in with Mom after she and Garrett imploded. Last I heard, she was working retail and had stopped doing photography. Whether that was by choice or because she couldn't afford equipment anymore, I didn't know. Mom sent a message through my aunt 6 months ago asking if I'd consider family therapy. I declined. Some bridges don't get rebuilt. Some relationships die and stay dead. I'd made peace with being the sister who walked away, the one who chose herself. I didn't need their forgiveness, and I wasn't offering mine. Natalie and I met for dinner last Thursday at a new Italian place downtown. We laughed. Actually laughed. Not the careful, fragile kind of laughter from the early months when every moment of lightness felt like betrayal. Real laughter, the kind that comes from a stupid joke and too much wine, and the comfort of sitting across from someone who'd stood beside you when your world ended. "You look happy," Natalie said at one point. She sounded almost surprised. I thought about it. Realized she was right. Not every day. Not perfectly. But yes, happy. Or at least at peace, which might be better. I thought about my marriage sometimes. 7 years wasn't nothing. There had been good moments before everything rotted. I didn't regret marrying Garrett. That version of him, or maybe that version I'd believed he was, had been worth loving. What I regretted was ignoring the signs when they appeared. The coincidences I'd dismissed. The instincts I'd silenced. The version of myself I'd minimized to keep the peace. I wouldn't do that again. Wouldn't shrink myself. Wouldn't question my own reality. Wouldn't stay somewhere that required me to be less than whole. That was the real lesson. Not that love was dangerous, but that loving myself had to come first. Last Sunday, I drove to the river. The wedding ring had been sitting in my jewelry box for months. I'd taken it off the day I moved out, but couldn't bring myself to throw it away. It represented something once. A promise. A hope. A future I'd believed in. I parked by the walking trail and stood on the bridge looking down at the water. The ring was small in my palm. Simple gold band. No diamonds. We'd been practical when we got married. Saving for a house. For the future. I closed my fist around it one last time. Then I threw it as hard as I could. Watched it arc through the air and disappear into the current. Gone. Like the woman who'd worn it. Like the life I'd left behind. I walked along the river as the sun came up. The sky was pink and orange, and that particular shade of gold that only exists at dawn. Everything felt possible in that light. New job opportunities, new relationships, new versions of myself I hadn't discovered yet. I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of being alone, not of making mistakes, not of trusting the wrong person, because I knew now what I was capable of. Knew I could survive the worst betrayal and come out stronger. They'd thought I'd break, that I'd beg, that I couldn't survive without them. But here's what they didn't know. I was never the fragile thing they thought I was. I was the storm, and I was just getting started. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel. Every week, I share new stories of betrayal, revenge, and the strength it takes to walk away and rebuild. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Because sometimes the best revenge is becoming the person they never thought you could be. Thank you for listening to my story.